The proposed National Action Plan for COVID-19 is approved in principle. The specifics of which are as follows: to adopt measures for the containment and mitigation of the spread of the virus, to reduce the spread of new cases, and to facilitate the detection, identification, and isolation of COVID-19 carriers, to continuously sustain the conduct of the operations against COVID-19 pandemic in terms of human resource, logistics, and finance, to mitigate the consequences and impact of the COVID-19 pandemic to the social, economic, and personal security of the Filipino people. And we are hereby adopting in principle the proposed NTF COVID-19 organizational structure in the National Action Plan to lessen the burden on the IATF and to streamline and decentralize the operations in addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. Namely, A, the IATF will serve as the policy-making body of the operations, while the NTF COVID-19 shall serve as the operational command, to be headed by the Secretary of the National Defense. The National Incident Command will take charge of the day-to-day concerns and operations in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. Letter B, the NDRRMC shall determine and identify the agencies that will belong to the new units of the proposed NTF COVID-19 organizational structure. Within the proposed organizational structure is 1, the Task Group on Response Operations, which will be led by the Department of Health, with support from other national government agencies to address enforcement and security, food security, disaster risk management, and labor issues, among others. Number 2, the Task Group on Resource Management and Logistics, which shall ensure that critical needs of all concerned agencies will be addressed and provided. Number 3, the Task Group on Strategic Communications, which will be in charge of communications. Letter C, NDRRMC, agencies identified by NDRRMC shall immediately designate an official with the rank of Undersecretary or Assistant Secretary to their assigned clusters. The aforementioned clusters shall report directly to the IATF to ensure proper coordination. Next, the Philippine Charity Sweepstakes Office, or PCSO, is hereby directed by the IATF to transfer 420,585,000 pesos to the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation. The said amount shall be utilized to cover COVID-19 related packages of the PHIC. This amount corresponds to 50% of the remainder of the standby fund under Section 4 of EO number 201 per Section 1 of EO number 108. Next, the IATF recommends the actions proposed on the handling and disposal of the remains of COVID-19 confirmed cases and PUIs. The proposed actions are as follows. A, in handling the remains of COVID-19 cases, general infection precautions must be strictly observed to avoid further spread of the disease. B, LGUs shall designate funeral service facilities to handle the remains of COVID-19 cases and to provide possible financial assistance to cover the logistics, fuel, salary, and other expenses that will be incurred in the process. Letter C, LGUs and the DILG shall monitor and penalize funeral homes that refuse to provide logistics and transport of COVID-19 remains, including but not limited to refusal to pick up the remains, subject to the policies and guidelines of the aforementioned LGUs or DILG. Letter D, the DSWD shall allocate amounts for a funeral support fund allotted to the indigent confirmed COVID-19 cases and PUIs, regardless whether they are undergoing home quarantine or admitted in a public or private facility. DSWD shall allot 25,000 pesos per deceased for this purpose. Letter E, the LGU may release issuances or ordinances to put a price cap or impose a price freeze on funeral services located within their jurisdictions. Letter F, to reiterate, funeral services staff and personnel are granted exemptions from the imposed enhanced community quarantine. The said individuals may freely move and travel to ensure that the remains of deceased individuals will be given proper funeral services. Letter G, funeral companies are directed to provide transportation and or housing accommodations for funeral service staff. Next, guidelines, rules, and regulations of all LGUs declaring their respective community quarantine under paragraph A, item 2 of IATF Resolution number 12 must be compliant and consistent with the resolutions issued by the IATF. We have with us Secretary Ed Año, and he will be expounding on this later. Next, the IATF Resolution number 13, dated March 17, 2020, Section B, Item 1, is hereby amended and to be read as follows, and I quote, overseas Filipino workers, permanent residents of foreign jurisdictions, and stranded foreign nationals leaving for abroad through any of the ports in Luzon shall be allowed to leave the Philippines without any impediment, provided that this provision shall not be interpreted to allow outbound travel to jurisdictions where travel restrictions are in place, provided further that departing passengers may only be accompanied by not more than one person when traveling to any international port, provided finally that the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration is hereby directed to provide transportation services to OFWs intending to leave for abroad. End of quote. Lilinawin ko lang, no? Itong provision na to, in-amend po natin para ma-lift po yung 24-hour rule for outbound foreign nationals. Dahil po marami po sa ating yung mga foreign nationals po ay nagrereklamo na dahil sa 24-hour rule, nung nakaraang resolution ay nahirapan po silang umalis ng ating bansa. So ang reminder lamang po natin para sa ating mga LGUs at sa lahat ng mga enforcers, hayaan na po natin, wag na natin pahirapan ang mga foreign nationals na makaalis po ng bansang Pilipinas. So nilift na po natin yung 24-hour limitation para po mas maging madali para sa kanila na lumuwas at umalis na po ng bansang Pilipinas. Next, stranded passengers, whether Filipino or foreign nationals, are also allowed to book hotels and seek temporary accommodations. For hotel and other forms of accommodations, single occupancy of rooms shall only be required for health workers and repatriated OFWs. Double occupancy of rooms shall be allowed for other individuals not falling within the aforementioned individuals, subject to guidelines of the DOH. Outbound and repatriated overseas Filipino workers and stranded foreign nationals shall be granted free and unimpeded access to and from national government facilities such as airports, ferries, bus terminals, etc., notwithstanding any LGU pronouncement to the contrary. The said free access shall extend to the vehicles carrying the aforementioned individuals in order for them to reach their final destination. No fee or any other requirement shall be imposed by LGUs in this regard. Ulitin ko po, para sa ating mga LGUs, kung meron po kayo mga foreign nationals na stranded po sa inyong lokalidad, hayaan na po ninyo silang makaalis ng bansang Pilipinas. Sila po ay nakikipag-ugnayan na po sa kanilang mga embahada. Huwag na natin po sila pahirapan. Hayaan na po natin silang makaalis. Next, the OCD is hereby designated as the main coordinating body for all domestic donations relative to the management of COVID-19. The OCD, or Office of Civil Defense, is authorized to receive all domestic financial donations, which shall thereafter deposit the same to the Bureau of Treasury. The intended beneficiary agency shall then submit a request to the Department of Budget and Management to access such funds. Government agencies who likewise receive donations in kind are hereby directed to report the same to the OCD. The Presidential Communications Operations Office will make the necessary communications to this effect. International financial donations shall be evaluated and decided on by a technical working group comprised of the DFA, the OCD, DILG, DBM, and Department of Finance. Next. The IATF approves the following recommendations of the Department of Agriculture, subject to implementation of strict skeletal workforce and strict social distancing measures. Number 1, allow all farming and fishing activities to continue. Number 2, exempt all healthy farmers and farm workers, fishers, and agribusiness personnel. Number 3, allow agricultural supply stores and outlets and veterinary clinics to operate. Number 4, reiterate unhampered movement of all supplies used for agriculture, including food packaging and manufacturing materials. Number 5, reactivation of the Local Price Coordination Council, or LPCC, to strengthen the price monitoring and enforcement. Number 6, upscaling Kadiwa ni Ani at Kita in support for food availability, accessibility, and price stability. And number 7, support the DA program, Ahon Lahat Pagkain Sapat, or ALPAS, kontra COVID-19. Next, the IATF endorses the recommendation of the DTI in allowing the full operation of those engaged in the manufacture of medicines, medical supplies, devices, and equipment, including but not limited to suppliers of inputs, packaging, and distribution, to address the country's clear and present need for medical supplies and equipment. Next, the DTI shall enjoin concerned export enterprises that manufacture medicines, medical supplies, and equipment to supply at least 80% of their daily production for local or domestic use. And lastly, the IATF strongly encourages companies to process payrolls online. However, For those who cannot, one payroll manager for each company is allowed to travel on March 26 and 27 for the purpose of processing their company payrolls covering the period until April 15, 2020.